Good morning and welcome to week 3 of our class. I promise this week's video is going to be very short. I know the last two were much longer than I initially said they would be. That's mainly because of the material we were covering. I wanted to make sure, my goal in each of these videos is to make sure that you know everything you need to do well on the assignments for the week and how those assignments contribute to the overall structure of the class so that you know why we're doing them and how they'll help you in the long run. This week is very straightforward though in terms of knowing those things. And that's in part because these first 3 weeks I have designed as part of a unit that is to help you learn to write analysis as a highly important tool in your repertoire of tools for communicating effectively. In the first video, I talked about the course design and course goals and how my one main goal for the course is to help you learn to be a highly effective communicator in our culture, to be able to communicate, interact with others well. A big part of communication obviously is writing, and that's the university's focus for the class. My personal focus, I think, is to make you a better communicator in general so that you find use for this class well beyond just writing, although you will be asked to do much writing in your career in later courses at the university in addition to this one. So along those lines, with different rhetorical situations, the first kind of layer to this discussion of communicating effectively is rhetorical situations. That's what we worked on the first week. With rhetorical situations, you learn different skills to use in different rhetorical situations. The rhetorical situation you'll be in most often right now is academic writing because you're enrolled in a university and that's probably where you're doing the bulk of your writing outside social media. So one of the most important skills you can learn for writing academically is to write analysis. And I would even go so far as to say is once you really master this skill, it becomes much more applicable to other rhetorical situations beyond writing academically. Because writing analysis is the key ingredient to writing persuasively. And the more you think about it, I imagine if you start to think of different rhetorical situations, you will start to think of or start to realize that usually in most rhetorical situations you're trying to persuade someone. Whether that's, say, a job interview, persuading someone to hire you for a job, or you're having a disagreement with your spouse or significant other, or you're convincing someone of something as simple as where to eat lunch or what movie to see. We often use persuasion in our speech and our writing, our social media, our communication, I think much more than we realize. So learning analysis will help you tremendously. So again, the culmination of this unit, the first week we worked on rhetorical situations. Last week we worked on ways to write analysis. Those worksheets that worksheet I asked you to fill out last week and the other ones that accompanied it were specific guidelines to kind of force you to write analysis in papers. I think it goes against human nature to write analysis because when we write analysis, we're telling people our thought process. We've been thinking through something, we've figured out this argument, we know our own points of persuasion, but in order to actually persuade other people, we have to put our thoughts down on paper. And what seems obvious to us is not always obvious to others. So we feel like we're stating the obvious, but when we're stating the obvious, at least what's obvious to ourselves, we're most often actually writing for readers, which is so important. It's much more important to write for others rather than for yourself. Think about your audience, write for your audience. Think about what do I need to say in order to explain my idea so that others can understand it. And again, that may seem like you're stating the obvious when you do that, but it's not obvious to your readers. And that's such a hard lesson to learn. I think it took me years to learn it until I was really in a situation where I had other people reading my writing for significant reasons and they didn't understand what I was saying. And I had to kind of take a step back and say, okay, I need to start writing for readers. And so that takes writing analysis because analysis is explaining our thoughts. So what those handouts last week asked you to do were to state an idea, give an example that proves your idea, and then in the analysis, explain the connection between the two. Explain how the example or the evidence proves your idea. I'm asking you now this week to take those skills and put them into an actual paragraph. So if you look at this week's discussion board question, you can see it's essentially the same question I asked you the first week. But instead of asking you about your own rhetorical situation, I'm asking you about someone else's rhetorical situation. So there are 5 essays in a folder under essays on Canvas called, the folder is just called essays, but they're all essays that have to do with college, writing, and the relationship between language and power. I thought these topics would really resonate with you because we've been talking about rhetorical situation, and if you learn to communicate well, master thinking rhetorically and rhetorical sensitivity, you can have such success in such a wide variety of rhetorical situations that the relationship between language and power, I'm hoping, is one you will connect with right now. So you simply pick one of those essays and you analyze it the same way you analyzed your own rhetorical situation. What is the purpose? Does the writer achieve his or her purpose? Why or why not? Give an example from the essay, analyze that example to prove your argument, and feel free to talk about other aspects of the rhetorical situation when you do that. For instance, audience or tone or whatnot. So hypothetically, you could say, such and such author fails to achieve her purpose because the tone she used made it unable for her to connect with her audience. That could be one example, a hypothetical example of a thesis statement. So it clearly answers the prompt, and it talks about the rhetorical situation. You would then go in and give an example from the essay, and then what would happen is in your analysis, you would explain, okay, this example is the tone. Quote the passages, explain how those passages show the tone. Maybe give another example, or at least explain who the audience is, and then give the logical reasoning behind the idea that this tone is not appropriate for this audience. Just one example. The idea here is to take the skills we learned last week and put them into an actual paragraph and continue to work with these concepts of language and power and rhetorical situation by seeing some more examples where that's discussed. The last thing I'll say is the difference between summary and analysis. This is a key difference to learn when writing analysis. Summary is describing things. Analysis is critiquing and evaluating them. So for instance, you could write a summary of what happens in the essay that you choose to write on, but that wouldn't be analysis. That would be summary. Someone else could read the essay and get the same information or look it up online. An analysis defends and proves your opinion. That's something someone else can't find without actually reading your writing, and that's why it's so important to learn. So be sure to make that distinction. Work really hard on making that leap to, okay, I'm not just explaining to readers what this says, I'm breaking it down, I'm analyzing it, I'm going into detail about its significance in relation to my argument. That's the difference between summary and analysis. So hopefully that information is helpful for you, and hopefully you find this week's assignment helpful in the grand scheme of things in terms of writing analysis, because it's something you'll be asked to do a lot, including, later in this course. So, have a great week. Email me if you have any questions, or send me a message on Canvas. And I look forward to reading your writing. Have a great week.